I'm here in the beautiful St.Ives Bay. Why am I here? Well, Duotone have asked their team riders to make some little clips of their local spots. Obviously this year, with all the travel restrictions, for a lot of us it's been hard to go around, so we've had to basically make the most of our windsurfing at our local spots. As a lot of you may know, I've already shown a little video showing my proper home spot, which is in Brighton. In this video I thought I'd show you around my adopted home spot. Cornwall has been my home turf last autumn and winter, and I've been super lucky to be here and score some really good conditions. So we're talking about St.Ives Bay, which you can see behind me. This is right at the end of Cornwall and is one of the biggest beaches down here. It's a big curve. You've basically got a 90-degree angle, so you can pretty much, if you wanted to, you could sail in any kind of wind direction, which is pretty amazing. The whole surrounding area is pretty flat, so it means you get a lot of clean wind coming down here. You know, there's not many cliffs shadowing the wind. So it makes it one of the most consistent spots down here. Now when I mean consistent, I mean it consistently works when it's windy. There's hundreds of beaches down here in Cornwall, and on a windy day you might be able to score good conditions on another beach, but in terms of accessibility and, you know, guaranteeing yourself a sail, this is the place you want to be. So any swell from west to north is going to get into the bay. If it's a bit too south, it's probably not going to get in, it's going to be a bit small. In terms of wind, if you want those classic down the line days you get here, you want anything from south-southeast all the way to west. If you want some more onshore conditions, you're looking at winds from west all the way to northeast pretty much for those jumping days. But I wouldn't recommend you sailing anything sort of from northeast to south-southeast. It's going to be pretty offshore at most of the spots here. Okay, so it's a windy day down here in Cornwall. You've got a few options in the area. Where do you know where to go? So starting with Godrevy, this is the beach where it's the most exposed, so you're going to get the biggest swell in this northern part of the bay. As you work your way down, the waves are going to get smaller and smaller. Along with this, you've got the predominant southwesterly winds, so that means the further sort of south you go down the bay, the more offshore the wind is going to get, and vice versa. When you go up, it's going to get more and more onshore. So that means you've got to kind of compromise between, do you want bigger, maybe more choppier onshore waves, or do you want cleaner but smaller waves? The great thing about it is on the same day, whatever your level is, you can kind of find your spot on the bay that suits you. If you're more of a beginner into the waves, then you can go down to the Bluff where the waves are smaller and still have a lot of fun. Now, being one of the most popular places to windsurf down here, I'm not going to lie, it does get busy. On the good days, it's busy on the water. And me coming from the south coast of the UK, you know, the conditions you get there on a good day, even if it's busy, you can find your waves. You know, it's kind of mushy, you can get any waves you want, there's loads of them. Down here, it's a bit different. You know, it's really wave sailing rather than windsurfing. It's a lot more like surfing, so we do have rules down here just to sort of keep it all ordered and keep everyone happy on the water. So the main rule is basically whoever catches the wave first has right of way to surf that wave or to windsurf that wave. So if you go out back, catch a big swell and ride it all the way, and that is your wave. Now, if you catch the wave at the same time as somebody else, it's the person who's furthest upwind. So if you caught a wave at the same time as somebody else and they're upwind of you, the best thing to do is just tack or jibe off the wave just to avoid any hassle. Now, there are kind of rules on top of like local rules that I've kind of had to work out while I've been here, and it's been a bit of a learning process. But it is the same wherever you go. There's always going to be local guys, and I'm definitely not a local guy. I've been here for the best part of half a year, and there's been people who have sailed here for their whole lives pretty much. So there's always that thing where, you know, just respect the locals. Basically just use your common sense while you're out there, and follow the rules, and everyone's going to have a lot of fun. And there's always a really great vibe down here on the good days. Okay, so I'm just going to give you guys a very quick overview of the different spots we have here. So we're going to start off with Godrevy. So the parking situation, big National Trust car park, no worries there. And then from there you can walk basically around sort of the river onto the beach, or you can walk over the dunes to get to the beach. In terms of the tide, it's great. You can sail from low tide all the way up to high tide, which is amazing. but there are a couple of things you have to be aware of. So there are a couple of rocks in the middle of the bay and the beach, and at mid-tide they're kind of half hidden and you can go over them, so just be careful there. At high tide you can go over them, at low tide obviously you can see them on the beach. And then you got the river that comes out, the Red River. On the big days, you know, that area can get pretty choppy and you can get quite a bit of current out there, so just be careful. If you want post-session food and drink, you've got the cafe right next to the parking, which is pretty easy. So moving further down the bay, we've got GB, probably the most famous, well-known spot down here. And but really it kind of merges into Godrevy, and on different days the peaks are going to work in different areas. Again, you have a massive car park here, so no worries. And then to get down to the beach, you can go down the goats track, which is a little bit sketchier, or if you don't fancy that, you can kind of walk all the way around past the lifeguard hut, and then get to the beach down there. So GB a kind of low to mid-tide spot. As you can see, at high tide you've got a lot of rocks and cliffs to deal with. So apart from that, there's not too many hazards. You've got a big left towards the rock, which is pretty easy to spot most of the time, but just be aware of that. Now if the tide is coming up, you can always sail sort of downwind to Godrevy or upwind to the next spot, which is Peter's Point, and pretty much the same as GB and works in the same conditions. And you can sail up or you can walk there through the dunes. Now after your windsurf, you've got the Sunset Surf Cafe, which is really good. They support the events here, so well worth going and having a bit of food and drink. Now the next spot down the bay, we've got Mexico's or Sandy Acres, which you would have seen in one of my videos. So to get to this spot, you have to go down a bit of a sketchy road, so that takes a little bit of time, but the parking there is alright. Remember to pay, they're pretty on it. And then yeah, to walk down to the beach, you just go through the dunes, down a big sand dune to get to the water. But a bit of a tip for you is don't get too tired on your windsurf session, because you've got to come up that hill, that dune, and that is a workout in itself. You can sail here all the way from low tide to high tide, and there's not really any hazards. You've got a little bit of a shore break at high tide, but nothing too serious. So yeah, the next spot we go down is the Bluff, or Hale Estuary. It's a little bit different to the other spots actually. It's a river mouth wave, and so yeah, you got the big parking there at the Bluff Inn. Again, make sure to pay your parking, they're pretty on it. And then yeah, just a walk down, sort of down the concrete path to this little covey beach where you can launch, and it works pretty much at all tides, from low to high, but at high tide you won't be able to launch from that little beach there. You'll have to go to the next beach along. In terms of hazards you've got to be aware of is the river mouth. At certain points of the tide you can get a lot of current there, so that is something to be careful of. Obviously in these images here the waves are pretty small, but it can get good here, and you would have seen they did the event here, the Red Bull Storm Chase, and those conditions looked pretty nasty. Post windsurf you can head into the Bluff Inn for some food and drink when it's open, but for me personally, my favourite is to go down into town, into Hale, go to Philps Pasties, and for me there's nothing better than ending a windsurf session with a big Cornish pasty to munch down on. So there you have it, that's my guide to my sort of adopted home turf, and yeah, very different to your average UK South Coast spot. You know, conditions here can get pretty nasty, pretty big munchy waves, so only go out in your comfort zone. You know, be aware of the rules and the locals, and you have an absolutely amazing time down here.